In the world of politics, there is one definition that is well known across the world: political development. Political development is the idea of bringing a unity in politics in a country, or making a country far more political. Um, this can be seen across the world, with many countries having far more or far less development in their countries. Much political development in countries can either be very helpful, creating a more perfect country, or weaken the country entirely, as well as losing allies along the way. With all that said, there is also countries such as the United States who play a dramatic role within political development and other countries as well, either helping them dramatically or barely making an impact. Political development overall can dramatically improve or destroy a country, as seen in China with the rise of power of Xi Jinping. To begin, one can look at China and how their political development has happened over time. China has had much change and evolution since the dawn of time. After numerous dynasties came and went over time, the current controlling party would soon step into power, that being the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese Communist Party would transition from a revolution party towards a ruling party, as it would then transition from political reform to lawmaking. Over time, the Communist Party would grow one of the largest economies in the world and would spark another political development in the early 2010s. China's most recent political development began with none other than its current president, Xi Jinping. At the start of his presidency, there was a lot of hope for for urbanizing rural China and bringing forth more democracy within the country. Now that we've touched that, democracy in China is a very interesting subject. Um, it's slowly has come forth into the country, but it is completely different from Western civilizations. Starting, democracy really started in China in the 1980s, mainly in villages, to maintain social order and vote for really who could be in charge of the village and more. And over time, it would grow decades later to more and more villages, reaching about 900 million uh, people. However, voting in general is not exactly how one would expect it to be. Voters don't choose among political parties. Instead, they directly nominate candidates and vote by a secret ballot for a committee of candidates who serve 3-year terms. This idea um, allowed was mainly allowed mainly for smaller communities, since the people there primarily know who would be running, and they would be much more affected compared to, say, a national level. And for national level, they only vote for smaller ones, because then if there's mistakes, it's not going to affect the entire country. That's at least what they think. Now, with all that in mind, Xi Jinping's term in office is almost an extent to a dictatorship. Um, the government itself is ruled by his party primarily, the Chinese Communist Party, of course. Xi would instead replace the idea of collective leadership that had been worked upon for several decades, and return to a more authoritative position. As he would get rid of term limits. Normally, it would be a max of 2 term limits for 5 years, but he got rid of that, meaning he could be completely in power past 2022, when his you know um, his office position would have ended by then. Since that time, the United States has been in complicated relationships with China since then. Since that time, the U.S. has been looking at the rise of their military, since it is growing almost to the size of the United States military. If not, it will be even stronger than the United States. The United States has also denied several visas as a result of the chaos, more specifically back in 2020 when COVID started to spread from China. President Trump issued a lot of visas being denied. So, to conclude, the rise of the Chinese Communist Party within political development, in my opinion, has weakened the nation entirely. Um, since Xi Jinping came into power, the progress of the nation had made it go a complete step backwards. After all the progress and democracy slowly coming in, it just completely went back to its old ways, creating a more authoritative and dictatorship-like country, much like the time of Mao Zedong, which in fact people have credited Xi Jinping being one of the most powerful people in China since Mao Zedong. When Xi Jinping empowered the idea of democracy, um, voting for national levels of office, and multiple parties being in power has now just become non-existent, been kicked out the door, much due to the strict rules that Xi Jinping has brought forth in China, unfortunately.